widely recognized among Einstein scholars that Einstein was working in a milieu that drew upon pre-existing work.
Well, I get that. I mean, of course, standing on the shoulders of giants and all this sort of thing. I'm just saying it's interesting that Heaviside, using an old model, managed to make predictions that hold true in a model that sort of came after him. And yeah, he may have had rudimentary parts of this model, but it would be like saying that I can derive the same answer out of pre-calculus maths as I can out of calculus. Which you can, of course,
right.
but it's interesting in the sense that perhaps it was a way or is a way to marry these two ideals together, because two very different methods have produced presumably the same result in terms of predictability.
Well, it can't be exactly the same result. And in any case, because I mean, one is a statement about the space-time manifold, and the other is just not. But right, I mean, the fact that he wrote something down that inspired later research that identified something that was sort of qualitatively similar, that doesn't mean that Heaviside predicted what was discovered.
Well, I mean, he did predict it. I mean, you can say doesn't necessarily mean, but he literally did. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean he did not either. I mean, he did.
Well, I don't see how, right? So
well, because he predicted the effects. Now, he couldn't have specifically said why or how, but the effects.
Well, but he's not going to be able to give you he's not going to give you a quantitatively exact prediction of the effects that were in fact observed.
Sure, but again, I understand the position you're coming from, right? Because you're a scientist and you want this to be accurate. But I find that an incredible.
I'm not a scientist. I'm a philosopher of physics.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry, but I of course you'll have a more nuanced view than. But I find that incredible pedantry to sort of say, well, he was the same, but here's why he wasn't the same for this very particular reason that has nothing to do with why he was the same.
Well,
I mean, I guess, maybe that's just me. I'm not as involved in the philosophy of science as you are, and I'm sure that you have very good answers as to why that's true, but it just doesn't really convince me to say that they both came to the same conclusion, but Heaviside's conclusion is wrong because he couldn't sufficiently explain the conclusion he had.
Well, but that's not the claim, right? The claim is that they, in fact, did not come to the same conclusion. They came to conclusions that were, in certain respects, qualitatively similar, but that's not the same thing as coming to the same conclusion.
No, and again, I'm not saying that Heaviside was necessarily correct, right? What I'm saying is that I find it very intriguing that Heaviside could have used this old model of Newtonian mechanics to come up with predictive models or to come up with predicted phenomena that would be noticed and be able to fit into Einsteinian mechanics. And in that sense, it seems that there is, however approximate, some kind of link in this particular kind of field or work between the two. Again, there probably isn't, right? Because otherwise we'd have a unified field or a unified theory by now.
Well, I mean, but hang on, that doesn't tell us about whatever effects that you get out of Newtonian gravitation. You had better be able to get them out of the Einstein field equations. That has nothing to do with being able to produce a unified field equation.
Yeah, that's what makes it a proper covering theory.
This it sort of sits over it's an umbrella theory. So in the sense that you would anybody.
Yeah, it has to.
Sorry. Yes, I get your point. Yeah, it's like somebody being on a lower rung of the ladder, but that doesn't mean that.
Well, it's kind of a it's also kind of a topological notion, but the whole idea is that a new theory is supposed to cover everything below it and additional space.
Yeah, just because Heaviside was working on a lower rung of the ladder and he couldn't see the top didn't mean that there weren't more lungs on the ladder as of yet unseen. Yeah, okay, I get it. Fine. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was just faffing around with that point for a bit.
No, it's fine.
Mea culpa. But anyway, really fascinating discussion, guys and gals. Very nice talking to you. I'm sure I'll be popping in maybe another time soon. But I enjoyed our talk. So And I learned something today, which I'm always very pleased to do. So,
Yeah, I'm sad I came in
And
at the
this
tail
is
end of
the
it.
place to do it.
oh, I am sorry, but don't worry. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to speak again soon. But nice to see you all, and I'll speak to you soon, I'm sure. Good night.
Good night.
Is there a 411 for what you guys were talking about, Jay? Heaviside and
We were
Lorentz
talking
versus...
about a lot of things. We kind of meandered quite a bit. We're
But
talking
I
about
think the
alchemy.
point
Okay.
was about the. I mean, I think what Brenda wanted to hear about was the. Right, and I think. Sorry, maybe the best place to go first is
You're
just to
breaking up,
go and
You're
pull up.
breaking up, Jmez.
Can
I
you hear
don't
me
know if it's
now?
just.
Hear me
Yeah,
now?
can you repeat yourself?
It seems to be
Yeah,
okay.
so I think maybe the first place to go if you want to start reading up on the kinds of effects that we're talking about, just go to the Wikipedia page in Gravity Pro B and read that and look through some of
Yeah.
the links that it has.
Also, the page on gravido electromagnetism, which I've spoken about quite a bit. It's one of my, because it's such a lovely unification, and it really shows that some people want to say that gravity is just a form of electromagnetism that affects all objects, not just ferrous objects. It kind of they want to have that kind of unification.
Well, it's obviously not a form of electromagnetism.
That
Although,
it's akin to.
well, eventually, I would imagine, as people unify the theories, it would incorporate, you would incorporate electromagnet, all the
Well,
fundamental
there are
interactions,
some.
right?
I think what the point here is that there are some really nice analogies mathematically between
Mm-hmm.
electromagnetism and general relativity.
Yeah,
And
and it leads people to suspect that there's an underlying theory that would explain that.
well,
right?
I mean, but that's not a point about their unification. At least it's not sufficient to support
It's not.
that.
Yeah, it's just the point about the similarities
No,
of
it's
the
not
forces more
sufficient,
than
but
unification.
it makes people think that this is
Well,
where we should look.
no, I
This
mean
is where we should look, right?
well, I mean, so well, Clues of Klein thought so, but the usual thought today is that that's not the.
Oh, okay. Your connection seems to be bad.
Sorry, my phone got all screwed up.
Yeah, it did.
But anyway, I was saying that the point here is not a point that leads most people to think about unification. It's a point about just the analogy between the two theories.
Yeah, exactly. It's a formal analogy. It's not a unit.
By the way, Ace,
Mm-hmm.
did you ever pay up?
Reds failed to meet the terms of the bet, so he owes me money.
Well, you should. I'm trying to think of how to put that. Well, you should take that to him and show him that he failed to make the bet, and then demand that he pay up, right?
I sort of already did. Actually, so here, get this, Brenda. They sprung on me that tomorrow they're gonna have another hangout where they're gonna be talking some more trash about me, and I told them, I'm busy tomorrow. I don't think I'll be able to make it. And they basically formed an ultimatum. They said, well, you either make it tomorrow or you don't at all. So this is the kind of people I'm playing with.
They had a hangout the other day. I saw that, but you weren't in it, and I was curious
I
why.
tried to make it in, but I was also busy.
Oh,
Stuff.
okay. You were just busy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why you were in the chat?
Well, I was not busy during the hangout, but then they actually, they deleted my comments from the chat. From what I understand, my comments are now not visible.
I didn't know that. I don't know. It just seems weird.
You've been treating me very poorly.
I'm sure they have. Why do you say that Red didn't meet the
Meet the
terms of the
terms?
yeah.
Yeah, so here, I actually wrote this out. So let me just pull this up for you, and I'll read it.
I'm just curious.
Uh, so I said that he did meet the terms of the bet. He had to use the images from either Metabunk or directly from NASA to calculate the distance to the mountains using parallax. So what did Reds do? He used the JAXA 3D models and applied a ruler to get the distance, and then he used Oleg's GIF, which I explicitly made part of the terms not to use because it had non-optical transformations applied to it to claim that there is no parallax, even though there is clear parallax in the mountains of the metagif. So to sum up, the terms were that Reds had to calculate the distance from the Metabunk image or the official NASA photos and cannot use Oleg's GIF for the calculations. Instead, Red used the ruler tool on the JAXA 3D model to measure the distance and used Oleg's GIFs to claim that there's no.
I don't remember you excluding the GIF.
I did.
I don't
Actually,
recall
that
that.
was in the original live stream where Reds was like, "Oh, I'll just use this GIF because there's no parallax in it." And I said, "Reds, the Oleg applied non-optical transformations to that GIF, and it makes it unsuitable for optical analysis."
No, I don't recall that, but okay, whatever you say.
Yeah, I'm sure I could pull it up. I downloaded the videos. I'm gonna be making a response video pretty soon when I have time.
But I understood that he could use any formula, right?
Any formula, if the formula used the data in either the Metabunk GIF or directly from the official NASA photos. Yeah. But what he did is that he just used the ruler tool on the JAXA 3D model. That's all he did.
Well, no, he used calculations.
What? No, he didn't.
Yeah,
He didn't. Well, look, the calculations that he did were about angular size.
yeah, that's a
They had no-
calculation. That's a calculation,
Okay,
right?
but again, but the calculation that I asked him to do were to take the data in the Metabunk image or the NASA images and to derive a result of approximately 5, 6, 7 kilometers, and he didn't do that.
So he did do a calculation.
Not the calculation that was set out in the terms, though.
The terms didn't
And also,
specify
he
a
never.
calculation.
Well, also he never showed his work. He just read off some numbers. He never actually displayed the calculations on screen, not once.
So it needed to be displayed.
No, it's just that again, the calculations that he did were not the part of the terms of the bet.
But the terms of the bet didn't specify a calculation.
Yes, it did. The terms of the bet. Okay, let me read this to you again. So to use the images from either Metabunk or directly from NASA to calculate the distance to the mountains using parallax. That was the terms of the bet.
I don't recall it being specifically him needing to use parallax. I seem to
No, it
recall.
was.
I
It
seem,
was to
I
use
seem, I seem to
trigonometry.
recall. Yeah, I seem to recall that it didn't matter what calculation he used. He could make any calculation derived from the images, right?
Which he didn't. The
But
calculations.
He did.
No,
He
no,
used.
and no. It was no, no. And again, it was calculations based on parallax using trigonometry, or I mean, essentially anything that he wanted to. But he had to do it from the parallax of the distant mountains.
But he used trig. He used trig.
Yeah, but he used trig, but he did not use trig to calculate the distance to the mountains.
But he did.
Where?
Didn't he?
What
Didn't he
did
give
do?
a? Didn't he give a distance to the mountains?
Okay, but the distance to the mountains was from the ruler tool applied to the JAXA 3D models.
Right. So he used trig to calculate a distance to the mountains.
No, he didn't.
I'm not. You just said he did.
No, he didn't.
You just did.
No, he didn't. He used a ruler tool on the
So
JAXA
what?
3D models. So
S-
that's not meeting the terms of the bet.
So the terms of the bet were he couldn't use the ruler tool?
So the terms of the bet were, I'll say this a fourth time, to use the images from either Metabunk or directly from NASA to calculate the distance, to the mountains using parallax.
Well, he did that.
Nowhere in those terms.
He used trigonometry to calculate the distance to the mountains. You
No, he didn't.
just affirmed that's
No, he
what he
didn't.
did. Yes,
No,
he did.
oh my God, Brenda, you're so dumb. No, he didn't. Again, and he never showed his work. He just read off some numbers.
Don't we have a fucking mathematician in the community that can solve this bullshit?
I would hope so, yeah.
Well, there was a Jack. If I don't remember correct, there was like some guy or PhD who knew about topology or something like that, but he ended up getting banned. Ace got banned from that guy's server. So,
Well, I mean, it's not technically Chisholm's server.
well, I mean, yeah, you're right. It's Tofi server, but you know, they
Yeah,
both kind of own.
yeah. Because Tofi sucks Chisholm's dick. But